And now let's talk about the U.S. Census. After we've had several years back-to-back of record-breaking illegal immigration at the U.S. southern border, well, the second Trump administration is looking to make a significant change to the way that the U.S. Census is conducted every 10 years. Specifically, they're looking to end the practice of including non-citizens when counting up a state's official population total. Speaking on the matter just last month, you had the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Mr. Stephen Miller, say the following.
Will you try to exclude all of these illegal aliens that have come into this country over the last 4 years from the 2030 census that this current administration will control and operate?
Yes, absolutely. And the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, is passionate about this issue. He's taken leadership on it, and he's going to do everything he can to clean up the census and make sure that illegal aliens are not counted. Of course, the best form of exclusion for illegal aliens is to exclude them from the country completely by sending them back home, which is what the American people elected President Trump to do and what we are doing.
Now, Mr. Miller did not mention it in this particular speech, but the ramifications of making that kind of a change would be dramatic. That's because the census count is used in a number of different ways. Firstly, it's used to apportion the number of House seats that each state gets. It's also used to determine the number of votes that a state gets in the Electoral College. And then also, the census numbers help to determine the flows of trillions of dollars worth of government funds. Those are the three important factors that are determined by the U.S. Census count. And the changes that would come about if illegal aliens were not counted would actually be quite significant. For instance, in the last census, the one from 2010, there was a Pew Research study that found that if the government did not count illegal aliens, then New York, California, and Texas would each lose a House seat, while Alabama, Minnesota, and Ohio would have retained the House seat that they wound up losing. And the same would, of course, hold for the Electoral College. New York, California, and Texas would have each lost an Electoral College vote, while Alabama, Minnesota, and Ohio would have retained theirs. And that's not even mentioning that the states with large illegal populations would have seen a significant reduction in the amount of federal funding that was flowing to that particular state. And so, again, it's worth mentioning that that data we just went through was from the year 2010. However, looking at a graph of the number of illegal aliens entering this country over the last several years, well, it's been completely off the charts. Under the Biden administration, there were 8 million people encountered at the U.S. southern border, with many of them being released into the interior of the country once the Border Patrol was done with them. That's on top of another 1.7 million gotaways, which are illegals who evaded Border Patrol, but somehow we know about them. And then, on top of all that, there's an unknown number of people who just snuck into the country, and we don't know about them at all. And so, even on the lowest end of the estimates, approximately 10 million illegal aliens entered this country under the prior administration. I've actually seen some estimates that are as high as 30 million illegal aliens living in this country right now, which would roughly be 10% of the overall population. And all these people stand to be counted in the upcoming census that's going to be conducted 5 years from now. Now, it is worth mentioning that during his first term in office, President Trump did attempt to make this change. When the 2020 census was being conducted, President Trump attempted to add a question to it, a very simple question, which just asked the individual whether or not they were a U.S. citizen. However, the addition of that question was challenged in court. It was appealed all the way up, and eventually, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against the Trump administration, and in effect, they prohibited that question about citizenship from being added to the census. But then later, in July of 2020, President Trump signed an executive order to exclude illegal aliens from the calculations that decide how many congressional seats each state gets. However, as was expected, that order was also challenged in several lawsuits around the country by both state and local level governments. And also, even back then, there was the logical problem to Trump's executive order, which was if you did not have a question on the census asking whether or not the person was a U.S. citizen, meaning you didn't have that data point, then how can you then later use that very same data to decide whether he or she is an illegal alien and whether he or she should be used in the calculation of the apportionment of Congress? You would basically just have to guess the number. But in the end, it actually didn't matter because once Joe Biden entered office, actually on his very first day in office, he issued an executive order mandating that the U.S. Census Bureau include illegal immigrants in its apportionment. Here's specifically what Biden's order said, again, issued on day number one. Quote, The Secretary of Commerce shall report the tabulation of total population by state that reflects the whole number of persons whose usual residence was in each state as of the designated census date, without regard to immigration status. Meaning, as a practical matter, in the last census, states with large populations of non-citizens were definitely given more federal funding because of it, and then also, very likely, they were given more congressional seats and more electoral college votes because of it. And to that end, you had research that was conducted by the Center for Immigration Studies, which found that there was a significant shift in the number of House seats because of foreign-born residents. Let me read to you what they found. Although I will just quickly caveat this by saying that in this study, they were looking at non-citizens as a block. They were not breaking those numbers down by legal versus illegal. And in fact, they said that most of the changes that they found in the year 2020 were attributable to legal immigrants rather than illegal immigrants. But they were all non-citizens all the same, which would have been evident if you had that question on the census. Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes or no? If by checking no, whether they were legal or illegal, that question would have been addressed regardless. But that's just to say that this is not exclusively due to illegal immigrants, but non-citizens as a whole. And so this is what they found. Quote, "The inclusion of all immigrants, legal and illegal, in the 2020 census shifted 17 House seats. If their U.S.-born minor children who are under the age of 18 are included, the impact rises to 22 seats. This estimate represents the cumulative impact of immigrants, not the changes since the last census." And given that the margin of majority right now in the House is only 8 seats, it's obvious why between 17 and 22 seats is so significant. And also, they found that the split was not done equally on political party grounds. Quote, "In 2020, immigrants in Democratic-leaning states resulted in a net increase of 14 more seats than they otherwise would have, while Republican states had 10 fewer seats and battleground states had 4 fewer. If their U.S.-born minor children are included, Democratic states had 18 more seats, while Republican and battleground states had 12 and 6 fewer seats, respectively." All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment, I'd like to introduce our sponsor and my own personal gold dealer, American Hartford Gold. Now, as soon as the latest round of tariffs hit, almost immediately, the stock market hit some serious waves, we could say. It became super turbulent, very volatile, and of course, these conditions don't just affect Wall Street. They affect all of us with our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I want to introduce a company that I trust and I use myself to help secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move their assets into something tangible, something you can actually hold, physical gold and physical silver. 2 precious metals that help me sleep better at night, knowing that I have a hedge against all those brilliant decisions being made over in Washington. Now, they have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, they have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your doorstep, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive buy one, get one deal for my viewers. When you call them and mention my name, Roman, for every 1 ounce of gold that you purchase, you can get 1 ounce of free silver. And so take advantage of this special offer. Either call 866-242-2352 or simply text Roman to 65532. That's again, 866-242-2352 or text Roman to 65532. I'll also throw their information. It'll be down in the description box below. Now, obviously, a state with more people there should be given more seats in Congress and more federal money. That's the way that the system is meant to work. But the question then becomes, who gets counted? Is it every living human body in a given state, or should it just be the citizenry of that state? Well, frankly, there are arguments on both sides. On the one side, in terms of the proponents of counting everyone, they say that, quote, "Since the first census in 1790, the nation has counted not only citizens, but also residents to determine such representation. In addition to citing its long history, defenders of the practice say it is only fair that states should be given the power and resources to represent and serve everyone within their borders." However, on the flip side, you have critics of this practice who say that, quote, "The government's powers come from we the people, citizens or eligible voters." They also say that the practice dilutes the representation of American citizens while incentivizing localities to promote illegal immigration. And in terms of an incentive structure, that is accurate. And of course, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, this question becomes a lot more pertinent in the coming census, the one that's going to be conducted in 2030, given the fact that we've had bumper years in illegal immigration. And so this is all the backdrop for what Stephen Miller was discussing. Also, while we're waiting to see what the specific actions that the Trump administration will take this time to either add the citizenship question to the census or somehow sift out non-citizens, it's worth mentioning that there is a legislative solution making its way through the system. A bill that was reintroduced this session, you can see it up on your screen, called the Equal Representation Act. And the bill is actually very short. It's only one single page, and it simply would do the following. Quote, add a citizenship question on the decennial census to require reporting on certain census statistics and to modify apportionment of representatives to be based on United States citizens instead of all individuals. This bill was actually reintroduced during this session of Congress by a North Carolina Republican named Chuck Edwards, and currently it's working to get out of committee so that it can actually be voted on by the full House. And it's worth noting that the chairman of the Oversight Committee, where the bill is currently situated, that chairman is named Congressman James Comer. He recently said in a statement that, quote, American citizens' representation in Congress should not be determined by individuals who are not citizens of the United States. And he added that his committee is planning to move the bill forward during this 2025-2026 session. And so we'll see whether that actually happens. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the Trump administration and this bill to go through, if you are interested to learn more about this entire issue, the arguments on both sides, the legislative history behind it all, and what the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled on in this regard in previous cases, I will throw the links to all my research notes. You'll be able to find them down in the description box below, which is, as I always mention, that same description box right below that like button, which I hope you just smash so this video can reach ever more people via the YouTube algorithm, as well as that subscribe button, which I also hope you smash if you haven't already. That way you can be informed of any new videos as soon as we publish them. And also, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments section. Do you agree that the U.S. Census should have a citizenship question? I mean, the argument against it is that there's history behind not doing it, because since the founding of the census, it hasn't been asked. And you know, we're a country of immigrants, I guess the argument is, so everyone should be counted, and that if you begin to include the census, the citizenship question, a lot of illegal aliens will just not answer the census at all. They'll just shy away from it, and so you won't have a broad, true count of the number of human bodies in a given state. But on the flip side, when the census was founded in the year 1790, the first census, you did not have a situation like you have now with just streams of millions of illegal aliens coming across the border with, again, the low estimate is 10 million over the last 4 years, but that doesn't include the number of people who you just don't know about. And so if 10 million people you know snuck into the country, I mean, I personally, this is just my own estimate from my own head, I guess at least 20 million people, an additional 10 million who you don't know about. And so with that type of a situation, should those people be used to apportion something as important as congressional seats, electoral college votes, and literally like $1.5 to $3 trillion worth of federal funding that's distributed throughout the states based on population? I'd love to know your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments section below. Let me know what you think, either pro or against. I'd love to know both positions. And then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.